Welcome back, everybody. Rich Baker here. I'm here today with Maarten from Pureterra. He's focused on water investment at the global level, trying to pick the innovators and disruptors, and we just had a really good conversation about how his fund was set up, how he sees the world, and then some quick tips or a few tips for how entrepreneurs can really get into the space, get up to scale, and find their $1 trillion opportunity. Maarten, thank you very much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Do me a favor and just introduce yourself and what it is that you're doing with Pureterra.
Yeah, I'm Maarten Ter Keurst, so I'm Director of Investments for Pureterra Ventures. And Pureterra Ventures is a growth equity venture capital firm that originated out of a company by the name of CHC Group that was founded by two Dutch entrepreneurs who came to China 20 years ago. They did very well, set up a number of businesses around China, employing around 700 people. And with one of those businesses, they organized the largest water technology exhibition in the world. And with Pureterra Ventures, we use the network that we have from organizing that exhibition and a number of other events in the water space globally as well, and our entrepreneurial experience to invest in early commercialization and growth stage water technology companies, and then get really actively involved in helping them commercialize and helping them grow and get over that tipping point of commercialization.
How did you get involved? What's your passion for water?
I've been in China for 5.5 years now, and for most of that time I've been with the mother company of Pureterra, initially doing market entry consulting for SMEs in among other sectors, but mostly the water space. So I'm familiar with the water space already, and at some point we said, look, we're helping these companies on a consulting basis, but really the network and the expertise that we have in the sector is better suited to be used if we start also taking an equity stake in those companies, because you get a small fee. Keep in mind those were SMEs, so they couldn't afford large consulting fees. So we said, well, why don't we take an equity stake and then really get involved in helping these companies? And initially, really, we wanted to do that 1 or 2 companies a year, just on a side business with the group's funds, and that kind of escalated pretty quickly into us now raising a $150 million fund. So,
So 1 to 2 companies, and how much was that fund originally?
We initially said we're going to do an $8 million fund, just with friends and family, entrepreneurs that we know, just to get the first traction as a ramp up to a larger fund, because we felt that initially the door for institutional investors would be difficult without having a track record of investing and exiting investments in the water space. But actually we feel that, or we noticed that talking to institutional investors, the traction has been so high and the interest has been so high that we've decided to scale up from that to 150.
That's interesting, because a lot of people in the sustainability space would say getting investment, getting money, it's very difficult actually.
It is, yeah.
So what is it that's difficult, and why did you see the ramp up so fast?
I think what a venture capitalist does in the tech or the biotech space is basically he invests in 100 companies and he hopes that 1 or 2 or 3 become the next LinkedIn or Google and really explode, and the rest of them, they die fast. You let go of them if they don't work. That doesn't really work in the water space. It's very technical, it's a very closed market also. You really have to know the niches and really have to get down into the technical details. And you know, let's be fair, you're not going to find the next LinkedIn in water. That's not going to happen. So you have to get more involved and make sure that you have more companies that survive, which is possible because the other side of the fact that it's a conservative industry means that once you carve out your niche, it's naturally protected. So more companies actually survive to profitability in the water space than in tech, for example, far more.
Are you guys going in on your own and hoping to take the full round, or are you looking to work with others? What's your preferred model?
Our goal is to get actively involved and to really contribute to the commercialization of these companies, because we feel we've got experience there, we've done that before, we have the network to add value there. But the other side of that is that we also want to have a vote in how that happens.
Yeah.
So we're active in a positive side, but from the entrepreneur's standpoint, that also means that you can't do certain things without our permission. So we want to get a significant stake in the business, because otherwise you just can't negotiate that. So usually we'll lead around.
How active are you with your entrepreneurs, and what does it take to get used to that?
What you have to keep in mind is that the water space it's highly technical. So very often the people that are behind the businesses are double PhDs, biochemists, material science, very smart people, but not necessarily business people. And they've been spending the past, I would say on average, 5 to 7 years basically nerding in a lab and perfecting a technology. And all the KPIs of the entire team has been on how do we improve the characteristics of this product. And that has to switch at some point from, okay, we're going to improve the product, to we got to start making some money and find customers. And that's a cultural shift in the organization that's very difficult for a lot of companies. So we get very active. We employ a management method called Rockefeller Habits, scaling up. We employ external coaches. So we do first a strategic session, and then on a monthly or quarterly basis, the coach comes in and helps them to implement that method across the company. And then on top of that, of course, we add our network and our expertise to try and help where we can.
Why do you go that far with it? Like, what is it that they struggle with as nerds in a lab to become executives in an office?
Because we see that it doesn't work otherwise. Because they just don't usually have the skill set that it takes to do it by themselves, and it's such a shift from nerding in a lab to starting to sell. So you have to get active to really drive that commercialization, to make sure that the money that you do give them actually gives them the runway.
What are some of the most exciting things you're seeing right now in the space of entrepreneurship, innovation, and water?
I think there's a lot of things happening in digitalization. We see that other areas of utilities like gas and electricity have already seen some pretty significant disruption in that space. And water, because it's more conservative, has been lagging behind. Optimization in terms of the management, but also smart monitoring, smart metering are things that are going to be very, very disruptive. Zero liquid discharge or near zero liquid discharge is something that's happening more and more. A lot of regulations are just becoming so strict that starts making a lot of sense. In general, industrial wastewater treatment is a big topic for us, and I think residential water treatment is one that's, I haven't seen the next game changer yet, but it's a sector that is basically ripe for disruption. There's a lot of awareness going on with consumers about the fact that their water is maybe not safe, even if you drink it from the tap, because it's clean at the municipal drinking water plant, but then it goes into a network which is 100 years old and is leaking and has lead pipes and has biofilm growth and you name it. Yeah. So people are starting to become aware of that, and the technology that's being used is 25 years old. It's ancient. So
what's going to bring that up to date? Like what's it going to take before we start making those investments, or those investments start making returns enough to drive more investors into the space?
I think it's already happening, and I think the main thing that's happening is that we're moving from an era of abundance to scarcity. Mm-hmm. We're used to water just being readily available, and there's more than we need, and that's changing. And we see that in many places. We see it, of course. The big names are Cape Town, in California. There's restrictions on water use, but that's happening in more and more places. Even in the Netherlands, they're trucking water because they had a drought this summer. I mean, the Netherlands is a pretty water rich place.
You've got like a water problem. Actually.
Yeah, exactly. Much, so right? It's changing, and this is the new normal. And with global population increasing and GDP increasing, which means that more industrial products are being used, more meat is being eaten, which is far more water intensive. Yeah. The water stress is really gonna increase.
Talking about the economics of water. For me, this is kind of like something that really needs to be discussed more and more, is that we don't really value the water that we're using. Yeah. So where do you think that is headed? And then how do you think that will catalyze more investment, I guess?
I think it has to change. The problem is, of course, water is being subsidized, because we say water is a human right, which it is, but that doesn't mean that we should give it away for free, because people then don't appreciate the value of it, like you say, and that inhibits investment, that inhibits incentives to save water. So we see that changing. We see that there's a very strong difference in the kind of investments that take place in countries with higher water prices than in countries with lower water prices. But I think at some point there's going to be scarcity, so there's only one way to solve that, and that's by increasing prices.
So if you're an entrepreneur now, why are you excited about water and water space? Like what is it that gets you up every morning? And
I think most entrepreneurs I know is it's having a positive impact, and seeing the writing on the wall, seeing that, look, you have a resource that's finite. We know that supply isn't going to increase anytime soon, and demand is definitely going to explode. So you're in the right macro environment. The question is, can you survive long enough, and can you be efficient enough to capitalize on that?
What are like the top 3 challenges you see entrepreneurs face when they see that right on the wall, like, I'm going to go for it? What are the 3 things that they do wrong?
I think the first and foremost is to try to perfect their technology for too long. Spend too much time and too much money on perfecting the technology, where really at some point you just have to say, okay, we're 80% there, 90% there, just put it out there. If necessary, put an intern sleeping next to the installation and just make sure it works, but take a little bit of risk.
Yeah.
I think also when we talked earlier about the shift from the technical focus to the commercial focus, we see a lot of entrepreneurs being too conservative in who they hire. Yeah. They tend to still want to be, I founded this company, I want to be the CEO, and whoever I hire, he has to do what I say, whereas actually you need someone who tells the entrepreneur how to start commercializing that product. And the third thing definitely is fanning out too quickly and not focusing enough. Water space is a very global market, so we see a lot of small companies going to shows around the world and looking for customers across the globe, and they just can't support that sales effort, and then they get lost in all the opportunities that are there. When
people are pitching you, what is it that you are looking for in these investments? Because again, you get a long-term horizon, you're making longer bets. What is it? You're going to be looking at something different than someone who looks at a 2 to 3 year cycle. So how do you look at investments differently?
I think the main thing that I'm looking for, and what very often is missing from entrepreneurs in this space, in this technical space, is the why. Why should I buy your technologies, and why do you do what you do?
Right.
I think companies, utilities, any kind of customers, they want to have a very clear value proposition, and the value proposition is not we're 10% more effective. The value proposition is there's a problem that you have as an operator every day that you find really annoying, and I'm here to take that away from you.
Yeah.
That's the value proposition. And then the second thing is, why do you do what you do? What is the core value of your company, and what makes you get out of bed every day? Because that's what makes companies and people want to work with you. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs tend to forget that. They focus on, we've got this amazing technology, and it's really high tech, and it's beautiful, but they forget that it's new, it's risky. So why would we switch from what we know to your risky new technology?
What happens when you have when it's not working, when it's struggling, when it's starting to fall apart, and you as an investor is like, oh my God, we put a lot of time, money, obviously your own passion to it. How do you guys help them recover in those times?
It can be tough, and it can be slightly unpleasant at times as well. And sometimes we have to put our foot down and just say, look, we think this is the way that the company needs to go, and then in the end, hopefully we find a solution. But so far, luckily, there hasn't been any entrepreneur that has said, look, we're not, we don't agree with you, and we're going to head in a different way. I mean, in the end, there's only so much we can do. We're a minority investor, so if the entrepreneur really wants to go right when we think they should go left, then there's not much we can do.
What are 3 things that you wish the entrepreneurs listening to this would know about how you see the world, or how they should get ready to start talking to you?
I think The first one is think whether you really need venture capital. I've had this discussion with entrepreneurs many times. What you have to remember is that venture capital is the single most expensive form of capital in the world. I mean, we work with internal rates of return, so basically interest rates of between 40 and 80%. I mean, even your loan shark on the corner of the street isn't charging that much, and that might seem predatory. But the reason that we do that is because a lot of startups, frankly, just fail. So the companies that do well have to compensate for all those companies that don't make it in our portfolio. So, exhaust all the other options of funding before you start talking to a venture capitalist. Also, because the day you accept venture capital money is the day that you sell your business. Because yes, we bring in money, yes, we bring in network, we bring in experience, and we'll try to help you as best we can. But there's also another side to that we want control. We want to make sure that you don't go buying speedboats with our money. So you can't. It's not really 100% your company anymore.
Right.
And the further you go down that rabbit hole of venture capital funding, the more that becomes an issue. So I think on average in the US, a founder that exits his company has about 5 to 10% equity left. That's a pretty big chunk that you're giving away. And for an entrepreneur that it's your baby, it's what you've worked on your entire life. That's something you have to really think of carefully. I think the other thing is, like I said, the why. The why is really important for me. That's what I'm looking for, and what kind of value do you want to get out of a venture capitalist?
Right.
Do you just want money, or do you really want to have that strategic involvement? And if you want that strategic involvement, are you also open to having someone on board that tells you no when you would like to go left?